I'm usually pretty timely. I like being on time, but there was a horrible car accident on I-75, and we were locked down literally for 90 minutes on 75, and then I had to take country roads for like 2 hours. So it's a nice 7-hour breezy drive down to Charlotte County, but it's a beautiful county. I love coming down here. So thanks for having me. I'm Anthony Sabatini. Thank you for the kind introduction. I don't think I really need a podium, but it's got the good acoustics in here, so I'll just stand over here. I'm a state representative, and I serve Lake County, but really I serve the whole state. Because my whole goal in being in politics is to give a voice to the people and not the politicians, not the special interests, not the lobbyists, not the establishment. There's already enough people doing that. There's a lot, actually. And a lot of what happens in the state legislature, the legislature gets credit for, but really what it is it's our good governor pushing this stuff through. The legislature, you're never going to hear about this because it all happens behind the scenes, but the legislature a lot of times is working against it, or they just don't want to do anything. Just stand still and push bills, only push bills through that lobbyists or people who are donating an enormous amount of money to politicians want through. And so internally inside the legislature, there's huge battles. And so I'm one of the few conservatives who actually has an independent mindset that's trying to push the Republican Party further to the right. I happen to believe that the biggest problem in our country isn't just the radical left, but the enormous deficit of courage amongst our Republican elected officials. The federal and the state level. It's cowardly rhino Republicans that are standing in the way. And I have a lot of my pamphlets in the back. They'll have a lot about the bills and the things I'm pushing. I'm lucky enough to have 5 of my bills make it through the legislature and signed by the governor. But a lot of the bills I'm pushing for take years to push through. It's not Democrats killing these issues. It's not Democrats standing in the way of a statewide audit in the state of Florida, a bill that I filed. It's not Democrats standing in the way of constitutional carry, a bill that would allow any person to carry a firearm for their own self-defense without paying duty-free or some bureaucrat in Tallahassee money for the right to defend yourself. It's Republicans standing in the way. It's not Democrats that are keeping the heartbeat bill from passing here in the state of Florida, which we could pass anytime. We could pass it right now. We could call a special session right now and pass the heartbeat bill. It's Republicans that are standing in the way. And so when I got into office 3 years ago, it was my 4th and final term in the State House, I'm running for Congress now, I just assumed all the elected officials were really fighting for the principles that I believe in, and that my wife, who's our state committee woman in the Republican Party, believed in. But what I soon found out was that a lot of these Republicans really don't believe in that. And the few that do, a lot of those guys lack the courage to stand up. So they believe the right thing, they do believe the America First message, and they believe in fundamental liberty and constitutionalism, but they lack the courage to stand up and fight. Because when you stand up and fight against the left, it's easy, right? Anybody can say, oh, look at Pelosi and Biden and AOC, they're crazy, let's fight with them. It's a lot harder to fight against your own party. It's a lot harder to fight against the establishment that wants to control you and basically manipulate you into becoming just another piece of the system. So that's why I stay in politics, and that's why I fight, and that's why I'm fighting for some of these issues. For me, all politics at this point revolves around one concept, which is stopping the systematic destruction of our middle class. If you think about it, all the issues revolve around that. Trade, the endless wars, the cult of Fauciism and the deep state, the administrative state, all these stuff, it all comes back down to the same thing, which is they're trying to put the squeeze on free thinking, flag-waving, patriotic, independent-minded Americans. It's what they want. What they really want is an omnipotent government, or in this case, the more popular thing happening now is gigantic corporations that take the place of government in running our lives. But they want these powerful centers to control all of society, and the rest of us just being serfs in society. Waking up saying, what are we supposed to do today? What are we supposed to think today? Where are we supposed to go today? Do we have to be locked down today? Do I need another booster shot? Am I allowed to open my business, etc.? They want that. That's what the left wants, and that's what the Republican so many of the do-nothing Republican elected officials are okay with, because they're not pushing back. When the lockdown first started in the state of Florida, I attacked it. I thought it was unconstitutional. I called it up. For months, I was by myself. I was the only elected official in the state of Florida really speaking against the lockdown. And then the lockdowns ended very quickly, thank goodness. And they started the mask mandates. For about 4 months, and I'm not saying this out of pride, I wish other people had joined me in the elected ranks, but I was the only elected official to fight against the mask mandates. And I don't think it was good enough just to give words against these mask mandates. I thought I needed to do something. So I went and found plaintiffs in 17 counties and cities, and I sued every single city and county that had a mask mandate in the state of Florida. Couldn't do them all, but I did about 90-something% of them. So that's what you have to do. We have to fight with every ounce of our energy, every fiber of our being. The stakes, what we're up against in this country, the stakes of what's happening right now are higher than they've ever been. Quite literally, higher than they've ever been. Not since the Civil War and the American Revolution has the entire idea of our country been on the line, and has there been such a serious existential threat. And it's domestic. It's a domestic threat. People talk about China. China is a serious, serious issue. And a lot of people might misunderstand this, but if you think about it, it's actually totally true. The bigger threat to the idea of America, to the freedom, the Constitution, to the world we know, the American way of life, the biggest threat to that way of life is domestic. It's the corrupt regime that runs our country, not just the government regime, but these woke corporations and these other special interests in the media and the universities in collusion, basically trying to pinch the middle class and destroy the American way of life and get us to eradicate every institution we believe in, whether it's religion, family, gender, objective truth, whatever it be. Now the military is under the gun. And so that's what we're up against. And that's, if you think about it, way worse than any threat we've ever faced. And it's domestic. Abraham Lincoln famously said in 1838 in the Lyceum speech that if the destruction of America was ever to arise, it wasn't going to be from a foreign threat. It was going to be a domestic threat. And he was right. Now, that domestic threat took a long time to basically gather force, but it's here today. It's here today. We are up against legitimate woke communism. And the biggest threshold question for the Republicans today is, what do you do with the woke corporations and the woke capitalism? For the last 4 months, literally until a month ago, the 4 months before that, 3 or 4 months, I was the sole elected official in the state calling for an emergency special session to ban these insane vaccine mandates. The only one for 90 days. And once again, not saying that out of pride. I'm saying it just to give you context that our elected officials were working against us. The people wanted this. They wanted a complete ban on any kind of vaccine mandate, any kind of inquiry from these woke corporations. And by the way, the big misunderstanding of this, everybody thought it was the Biden administration. Yeah, the Biden administration is pushing it. But these woke companies were doing the vaccine mandates independent of the federal government. The hospitals, Disney, they were pushing it before OSHA and CMS and all these other mandates came down. And the Republicans did nothing. Now, thankfully, the governor did the right thing and he called a special session, but a lot of people don't know this. When he called the special session, once again, the entire legislature, the day before, let's say, was completely against doing a special session because the old Republican mentality, which underestimates the threats against our liberty and against our country, still had this mentality of, well, that's the private sector. Those are businesses. We're going to let them do what they want. If they want to do vaccine mandates or vaccine passports and all this nonsense, that's fine, let them. That's the private sector. And this mentality is still popular in the Republican Party. Is it because they actually believe it? No. It's a pretext. It's an excuse so that way they don't have to deal with a real fight. The fight against woke capitalism, what these big companies are doing. Social media censorship is the best example. We had total power from 2016 to 2018 in the federal government. White House all the way down, Senate House, everything. We did nothing on big tech. And the question back then would have been, can we pass a bill, amend Section 230, and stop big tech censorship, which I believe is one of the biggest, probably the top two issues today with immigration. And I don't say illegal immigration, I say immigration, because yeah, we need to stop illegal immigration, but we also need a 100% immigration moratorium. Because the immigration we have right now, 1.3 million people a year, Is it just a way of trying to grow the Democratic base and bring people in who don't understand civic republicanism, and so the entire structure of our government collapses? It's happening right before our eyes. And so these are the threats to the party right now. And the Republicans, a lot of Republicans, they don't want to fight it. They don't want to do it. You have too many people like Mitch McConnell. We think that Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger and McConnell are this minority. You know, there's this misconception in the conservative movement, in the American First movement, that there's these few rhinos, this small percentage of rhinos in our ranks, and then they're causing all these issues. It's not a small minority, it's a majority. It's a majority of the elected officials. The amount of true, principled, Constitution-loving, America First Republicans in office is like 20%. The best example of this was the Liz Cheney vote in the first week of February. You might remember this, you might not. Time goes by so quickly, people have short memory. But the first time they held Liz Cheney for a vote, this is after she sided against Trump, voted to impeach Trump, sided with the swamp on everything, never-ending war, never-ending government growth, and was totally fine with all the COVID tyranny. They had a vote in the Republican caucus. Should we keep Liz Cheney the official spokesperson and Congress chair of the Republican Party? 75% of your Republican elected officials voted to keep her in that position. Only about 25 or 30% voted no. So the good people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, Paul Gosar, those people voted to remove her, but they were in the minority. Now, of course, the America First movement, the people in this room, never let this issue go, and by May it became such a gathering storm that Kevin McCarthy had to hold the vote again, and they got rid of Liz Cheney. But think about that for a second. Let that snapshot linger in your mind and in your memory going forward. That was the moment where you saw really who we have in office right now. And so I would submit to you, all the donors, all the Republican Party establishment, conservative establishment is going to tell you, we need to take the House back. November's the most important election. We got to beat the radical left. Absolutely, that's important. But I would submit to you that the August election, the primary election, is the single most important election. Because if you put the wrong Republicans in office, if you go to war with the wrong troops, you're going to lose. We lost in 2016 and 2018. Donald Trump did everything he possibly could through executive orders and Supreme Court picks to advance the movement. But the legislature, the elected ranks in the House and the Senate were working against them and working against us. And I spent an hour and a half with Donald Trump 3 weeks ago at Mar-a-Lago. Private meeting. And we talked about all this, and he is very, very aware of what we need to do going forward to fix where we're at. And he's learned a lot. We all have, right? He wasn't a politician. He had to kind of figure it out. It was crazy what was happening, what the Republicans were doing to work against him. I don't think anybody expected it. But so that's really been my sole mission. So I'd love to hear your questions and talk about specific issues, but I could just go on and on and on. I can talk about Tallahassee. I'm in the fight right now in the legislature to get a lot of stuff done that we need to get done. But I'm also running for Congress because the truth is we're in a way worse position in Congress. And if the federal government acted a lot more like we're doing here in Florida under DeSantis' leadership, we'd be in a much better spot. And so that's why I think we need to grow the America First Caucus in Congress and take our country back. And so that's why I'm running. I didn't really want to run. The truth is I never really wanted to run for office at all. I would have been happy just being involved in politics, like, helping on campaigns, being a lawyer, doing whatever. But the truth is I got sucked in because I was so disappointed by the rhinos who represented me. I said, I'm not going to be represented by a rhino. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to run, and if I have to run for office, I'll do it. And I've continued to run, and I've never lost an election, thankfully. But I will always run until I find somebody who I believe is as principled and as hard fighting as me. It's not just the principle, by the way. It's not just the votes. I happen to have the most conservative voting record in the state of Florida, highest scores from Club for Growth, Republican Liberty Caucus, all these different organizations. But that's not really something to hang your hat on. Anybody can just push a button. What matters is, are you fighting? Are you using your pulpit? Are you using your office to hold the party accountable? And right now, I will tell you, the Republican Party right now is extremely angry at me. They do not like me very much. Good. I actually, let me rephrase that. The formal party, the apparatus, right? The mechanics of the party, not the people. I like to think I have a pretty good following, and I have a pretty good social media following, and I was able to raise almost $700,000, not a penny of it coming from special interest from my congressional election, but from the people of this country, the people of this state. Why? Because I stand up and fight, and I say the things that need to get said and hold the party accountable. But the actual party leaders, the boss leaders, they don't like it very much because you're not supposed to call them out. In fact, the Speaker of the House, who's one of the biggest rhinos in the state of Florida, one of Jeb Bush's best friends, who had a mask mandate in the state capitol in March of this year. A year into the COVID tyranny, had a mask mandate. Of course, I never once wore a mask in the building. There's nothing they could do to me constitutionally. But they told staff, including my staff, who they had the ability to fire, that if they weren't wearing masks, they'd be fired. You know, that's who we have running the House right now. That same speaker called me the day the BLM riots really took off and you really started to see 200 cities on fire across the country. I took a picture of my AR-15 and I put it up on all my official platforms. And I said to the BLM rioters that want to come to Lake County, Florida, this is an AR-15. If you come onto commercial property illegally, you will see one of these up and close. Yeah. Right? Got like 30 million views. Everybody went crazy about it. It was funny. He called me the next day and said, I don't think that's the right messaging. That's not sensitive. We're in a healing time period. We're in a healing time period. This is what he was telling me. This is unproductive. We need to be conciliatory. This attitude, by the way, that's a sincere, real attitude. It sounds like a joke. This is how these people think. They underestimate the threat of the left. I'm here to tell you, there is no more room for compromise with the left. I'm not talking about your next door neighbor that happens to be a registered Democrat that might be a moderate Democrat, whatever. But the people that are in charge of the movement, the people who are pushing the riots, pushing the COVID tyranny, pushing all this stuff, trying to get me in trouble now for being an officer in the military who's against the vaccine mandates that they're pushing now. But these people, there's no room for compromise. This is a radical, insane, sick, satanic, woke communist movement that wants to destroy you. And if your answer to the riots that they push and create is that we need to find ways to compromise and be nice with them and reach out to them, I'm sorry, but you are part of the problem. You are part of the problem, and you must be eliminated from the Republican Party. As long as we have those weak elements leading our movement astray and wasting the political capital that our voters, that the good Americans of this country infuse and put their sacred trust into these elected officials, and this is what they do with it, this is how they act, they are the problem. They are just as much of a problem as the Democrats. They have to be rooted out and destroyed and eliminated from the party. But I will repeat this again, because it can't be repeated enough. They're not a minority. It's not just Kinzinger and Cheney, it's like whiny one or two. Yeah, they're really voting. Those guys are really voting. But the truth is, there's a whole swarm of them. They just keep their mouths shut. And there's a lot in the state. Just up the way, 2 congressional districts up, you got Gus Bilirakis. He's one of the biggest rhinos in the House. He just voted for the whole vaccine database that they just passed yesterday with the minority leader, Kevin McCarthy. These people are complete rhinos. Voted against all the election integrity stuff. They're completely against audits, completely against the cult of Fauci. And now finally people are figuring out the criminal that Fauci is. Now you see these elected officials, I think Fauci's wrong. We need to do something about him. It's been like 18 months. You're just now figuring this out. So these elected officials do not represent us. There's an interesting correlation I see oftentimes on political issues with the Republican base, the Republican voters, and our elected officials. If something generally has about 90% support amongst the voters, it'll usually have about 10% of the Republican elected officials ecstatic about that issue. But if it has 90% support amongst the elected officials, it's something that probably usually 10% of the actual voters care about. I'll give you an example. E-Verify is the single most important issue that the state of Florida can pass right now. All of the illegal immigration you're seeing right now, pouring in, is truly not a forced border, it's an open border. Coming in, and the ones who do get caught get sent into the country to live and work illegally here. We could fix the issue in 2 seconds by passing a mandatory E-Verify bill in the state of Florida. And if you don't know what it is, it's very quick. It's a federal database. It's the only good thing the federal government's ever done. It's a database that just tells you if a person, just by putting in their name, social security number, etc., is legally allowed to be here and work here or not. And if you passed it that every private sector employee or business had to use it, and you had penalties, civil or criminal penalties for employees who break the law, you would not see the illegal immigration. Can we fix the entire national issue? Probably not, because you got all the blue states that are going to embrace it. But let the illegal immigrants come and live in their states. We can fix it here in the state of Florida in 2 seconds. It's the Republican officials that are standing against it. Once again, 90% approval or so from the Republican base. Probably 10% of the elected officials working for it. And worse than that, actively working against us. The state Senate president, who's running to be the agriculture commissioner, a guy named Wilton Simpson, very corrupt political official, whose net worth went up something like literally 2,000% in his few years in Tallahassee. Shocker. Is the biggest opponent of this bill. He's fighting hand, tooth, and nail to appease the special interests in the ag, tourism, and construction industry to bring in a flood of illegal immigrants. And don't let them lie to you and say, if you pass E-Verify, it's going to somehow affect the economy in a negative way. What it's going to affect is the guys who are making $30, $40, $50 million on the cheap labor might make $5, $10, or $15 million a year. And they'll have to pay the workers of this community, right, of any community, $20 or $25 an hour, because that's what it's going to take to get them to work those jobs, versus the $8 minimum wage they can get for illegal immigrants or less. And so this is why they're fighting against it. Single most important issue, they're working against us. But you know what the big bill moving through Tallahassee right now is? That 2 or 3 news articles and debate, and there's all these debate, and everybody's focused on. Do you think it's audits? Raise your hand if you think it's audits or election integrity. Okay, obviously, you guys are wise to what's going on in Tallahassee. So, because most people will be like, oh, obviously it's like election integrity, or like E-Verify and fighting illegal immigration. That must be it too. Tax cuts, right? All the ridiculous inflation happening. It's time to obviously pass some massive middle-class tax cuts, right, for the middle class, so that way we can compensate for this insane inflation, price increases and stuff. No, it's not that either. It's a bill to designate strawberry shortcake as the official dessert of the state of Florida. You probably think I'm kidding, right? It's a bill to make strawberry shortcake the official dessert. Don't think it's going to replace the pie. It's cookie lime pie. But they're just coming up with a new category just called the official dessert as opposed to pie. Even though it's like completely illogical, they obviously have a lot of well, strawberries. But think about it, and that's fine if somebody wants to follow that. But to think that this is what's moving through the legislature right now, while we have, a stolen election, massive election fraud, government budgets going up. Don't listen to the Republican Party in Florida's official messaging saying that we're, cutting taxes every single year. Every year in Florida, taxes go up, regulations are going up, and the budget increases. I was the only person to vote against the budget last year. Why? Not out of spite. I think there were some good things in the budget, but for really 2 reasons. One, if the budget's going up, when you adjust for inflation and population, if the amount of money the government's spending is still going up, per dollar per person every single year, that's insane. We're not doing our jobs as Republicans, as conservatives, to lower the role of government in our lives, to reduce the role of government in our lives. So I voted against it. Right? It was sacrilegious to vote against the budget, but whatever, I did it. It was a terrible budget. Number 2, and this is actually the more important point, and this is a really important point to really use as a rubric going forward for everything we do as Republicans, every vote we make. We have to stop arming our enemies. We have to stop equipping our enemies. That budget had skyrocketed, insane, heightened, all-time high funding for higher education. Woke colleges and universities that have turned conservatives on their campuses into pariahs. I went to the University of Florida for college and law school. What these conservative students are going through now is completely and totally out of control. You got that backwards over the right arm. Oh no, I said I'm 7-hour drive. I was at UF last night, which is funny. I was speaking to the college Republicans there, and they're like, I'm hearing the horror stories, right? So I'm not for funding our enemies any longer. I'm not voting for any budget or doing anything to push anything that's going to give more money, more power, more influence to woke Marxist institutions especially today, they're coming out as woke, liberal, leftist robots, incapable of thinking independently. Incapable, and it's so funny, it's so Orwellian. The university tells them they're here to broaden their horizons and make them think critically. It's the opposite. Anybody that really thought critically and said anything critical of the general norms that the left is pushing through media and higher ed will be scathed, destroyed. These kids are afraid to put college Republicans or Federalist side or anything on their resumes because of what they're going to suffer through. And I actually called them out for that. I'm like, you guys got to be a little more courageous than that. Like, you got to put that on the resume. There was a kid who was like afraid to do it, and I was giving him a really hard time. But the truth is, why are Republicans allowing this to fester? We're in charge. We have to stop equipping our enemies. We have to start focusing on using state power. And this is what gets a lot of the old Republicans, not in age, but like older mentality, the dated mentality. It makes the hairs on their head go up because they think, whoa, we can't use the government to do anything. We just need to have a little, less government. Look, government should be soft-handed. No. When we have power, when we as conservatives have power, we have to use the power we have, the power of the state, the power of the government, to further our vision of what we want this country to look like. And what we want. What does that mean? It means reforming our subsidized education, our public schools and our universities to create conservative students. It bothers me when I see these bills come through that say, oh, we're doing a parents' bill of rights and students' bill of rights. We're going to protect their freedom from, the wokeism in the college universities. School boards are going crazy. I can't believe what the school boards are doing with critical race theory, mass mandates. The legislature can shut it down at any given time. The state is in complete and total control of all of that. And the governor also has the ability to remove those folks. And he did it out of fun. Like, that was a totally separate issue from what the legislature could have done. The legislature could have dropped the hammer on these people at any given time. The problem is the cowardice in the elected ranks of our legislators who don't want to use state power for our own ends. Let me tell you what the left would do if the left has power. I don't have to tell you, actually. I mean, if they control the Attorney General's office, if they control the state legislature, if they control, the moment they seize power, they use it to inflict as much pain upon us as they possibly can. And to further their perverse and sick, in their eyes, the good society that they believe in, right? The woke society. They use institutions to do that and to hurt conservatives. Why don't we do that? It's time for Republicans to start using power the way we should use power. And so if it was up to me, I would defund all of the leftist parts of these campuses, if not some of the entire universities, bulldoze them and create a model, a mimicry of a Hillsdale College here in the state of Florida. They're blown away. They're like, I never thought about that. Why don't we, apparently that has to be a private university, use private dollars. No, why don't we use our taxpayer dollars to build a conservative university that still teaches the great books that's totally devoid of all wokeness? No, none of this diversity, equity, critical race theory, anti-white racism, all of it. Get rid of it and create universities that are going to teach the traditional books and Western civilization and objective truth and patriotism and real American history. Why don't we do that? And they're not doing it because their sights are set too low. Their sights have been set really low. I think the best thing Donald Trump did is when he came on the scene, he really raised our sights. What are Republicans supposed to be doing, right? He's like, I'm going to fix all the trade issues. We're going to fix immigration. We're going to do a bunch of things to fix this country, take the court back, everything else. And he did it, but the Republicans had their sights set so low for so long. And people just stopped expecting Republicans to get, to really be for big ideas. We have to be for something. I'm against a lot of things, but we have to be for something. And what I'm for is a patriotic, hardworking, robust, healthy middle class. Middle class. I don't really care about the elites of this country. And I don't really care about some people, grieving victim culture type people in this society. I believe in the middle class, the healthy, good, patriotic, God-fearing middle class of this country. And improving the lot of those people, the people in this room, people like my parents and grandparents who came here from Italy in the 1950s with no money and did very well for themselves, that's who I care about. And it's time for Republicans to start caring about those people as opposed to just really the autopilot garbage that they've been pushing through for years and getting the strawberry shortcake, the official dessert for it. So I wish I was making that up, by the way. It's a real thing. So, questions? You want me to talk about some specific issue? I could go on and on.
Anyway, so originally we thought we had a few more people, so we're going to pool the questions. I was going to ask them, but future comments.
Ask me whatever you want.
Congressman Sabatini can handle it on the fly, so just raise your hand if you call.
Any questions you have about a specific issue? Usually I get a question about the audit or, yes sir.
Yeah, were you aware that the, sadly, approximately, I believe it's half the police and sheriffs in Florida are having illegal list of gun owners and are illegally profiling them, and under 790.335, that's a felony offense, and nobody will do anything. I tried to state attorney, I tried to state attorney general, I tried to DeSantis. Nobody wants to touch this. Can you do anything?
I can absolutely do something on it. Can I get a bill passed by myself? Probably not, but I can bring the issue to light. I assume what you're talking about is they're keeping basically files on individuals
people that have guns and they're literally I have the emails here, I'll get them to you, believe.
Yeah.
It's a felony offense and nobody will do anything.
Yeah, well, I definitely look forward to reading it. I know the type of issue you're talking about, but don't know the nuances, but I understand what you're getting at, which is that our agencies, government agencies, in this case, law enforcement agencies, which have had this halo around them for a long time, and people are like, oh, we can't criticize anything the police agencies are doing. We can't criticize or have any scrutiny for anything the sheriffs are doing. The truth is, they're government actors, they're state actors, and they need just as much scrutiny as anybody. One of the first bills I ever filed was a bill 3 years ago now. It was moving pretty good, and then some of the corrupt folks in the Republican caucus killed it. It was a bill that would have made it that any elected sheriff in the state of Florida had to do a line item, very detailed budget showing how they spend all their money in their offices. Right now, the average constitutional officer, tax collector, sheriff, everything else, does a 1 or 2 page budget, literally one budget to say, basically, here's how much we spend on human resources, here's how much we spend on equipment, this and that. So there's no detail, it's completely murky, and there's no accountability. So I did a bill that would have opened it up, but the sheriff's lobby killed the bill behind the scenes. So this is, I'll get back to your issue in a second, but the bigger issue here is there's an enormous lack of scrutiny of anything a lot of these government agencies that happen to be law enforcement related are doing, and that's a problem. It's a problem, and it's the sloganeering is the issue. You got Republicans that want to hide behind slogans, right? They'll just say, oh, we just need to support the police. I support the police. I have enormous support for the police. Absolutely, especially the actual, line police officer. But the agencies themselves have to also receive scrutiny of the citizens. Right? It's no exception to any other government agency. And if you look at some of the conservative sheriffs in the state of Florida, and you look at how much more often they use the red flag law, which is a disgusting, horrible, unconstitutional law that I file a bill to repeal every year and they kill it because the guys in charge of the legislature right now wrote the bill 4 years ago. If you look at how these conservative Republican sheriffs are using red flag laws to deprive people of their fundamental liberty without not even accusing them of a crime, much less charging them or convicting them of a crime, not even accusing them of a crime. Just an officer going to a court saying, I think this person seems threatening, so give me a warrant to go and obtain all of their firearms. It's totally out of control. It's completely out of control. So you gotta have Republicans who understand this issue and who are educated on who are going to fight. Most of them they hide behind the sloganeering and whatever, they don't want to go into the details. So I think something needs to be filed on it. Give me what you have. I'm happy to post about it, talk about it, and hopefully try to push an amendment for it. But right now you got the Speaker of the House and the Senate President that just zero scrutiny for anything that an agency is doing. And some of that is because right now the left is so anti-police, the Republicans don't want to do anything that even is perceived that way. But you still have to hold these guys accountable.
Right. In your next job, I hope you go after the January 6th refusal to give due process to the people that were put in.
Well, I think one of the most important things any president presidential candidate, I'm almost 100% sure Trump is running. But if he wasn't, anyone who would be running for president must vow to pardon everybody associated with January 6th on day one. You know, maybe not like the one or two people but the 99% of the people that have been charged with crimes who did nothing but trespass when they didn't even know they were trespassing because the building was largely open and they were basically waved in, have to be pardoned. They've used the January 6th so-called, fake hoax insurrection as a pretext to just ruin the lives of every Trump supporter and put people on lists and use the state power to punish people. And it's the process. It's the process of punishment. I know countless people who've gotten calls from the FBI saying, we want to interview you. We want to interview you because you were at the rally that day, even if they were miles away. And that's the punishment. It's to scare people into not being politically involved because they just don't want themselves or their families or friends to feel the wrath of the deep state. And so it's just sad. But no, it's an important issue. One thing I did related to that is, the Capitol Police, which is a radical, politicized police, so-called police agency at this point, is opening up field offices across the country. So one of the bills I filed this year is a bill that would ban the Capitol Police from ever operating in the state of Florida. That's one of my bills. If you Google me, just Anthony Sabatini, Capitol Police, you'll see the bill. It'll come right up, all the articles that are on it. But I think they should be banned. They're creeping into Republican states and blue states that just happen to have a lot of Republicans, like California, blue state, but has an enormous amount of people. So they're opening these field offices to basically start to surveil and come up with ways of just taunting and harassing Trump supporters. And that's where we're at right now. And the problem is you have the Republican establishment, once again, maybe a couple of them talk about it, but a lot of them just avoid it. To this day, not a single elected Republican in the state of Florida, except me and I think one other guy, have talked about the expansion of the Capitol Police into the state of Florida. And it's just out of control.
Now, given your candor as the insider there in Tallahassee, realistically, what can we expect for voter integrity reform coming up?
Well,
what do you think can pass through this?
I think what they did last year, which is about this much, it was about 2% of what they needed to do that got through. I think is what they're going to try to hang their hat on and say, oh no, we did everything. We have the perfect election system. Basically, this is a trick that a lot of Republicans do. They'll say, look how much better we are off than these other states. And so stop asking us to do more and don't expect more out of us. Pat us on the back and give us more money. And this is the main problem in Florida because, Florida is doing better than a lot of the states. But we have so much further to go. And this is the low expectations they want you to have. They'll do this, the Republican caucus will do this much. And they'll be like, look, we're better than Ohio. Look, we're doing better than Ohio on school vouchers because 55% of the students in Florida are available for voucher. Why are we not at 100% voucher system yet? Whatever the issue is, we can do so much better. We have complete control. Why aren't we doing more? But they'll just say, oh no, we're doing better than everybody else. So in the case of election integrity, we need to pass so many more laws. We need to pass the North Carolina law that says you have to have 2 signatures or an affidavit on any mail-in ballot. We need to close the window for mail-in ballots. We need to make it that only military or emergency kind of mail-in ballots.
2022, what are the chances of getting?
The truth is, I'm going to be blunt with you. People in charge right now in Tallahassee don't expect to do anything on election integrity of significance. If they do, it'll be something very, very mild.
All right, I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's their attitude right now. But that's not to say it's impossible. You have to understand, good things happen when citizens create a lot of pressure. See, the Republicans want you. They want you to spend all your time talking about Pelosi and AOC and Biden and the left. And I can't believe how crazy the left is. Because that gives them all this wiggle room to do whatever they want, right? That's why the Republicans always talk about the left. Oh my God, I can't believe what Biden's doing, right? Because they don't want you thinking about, well, what are you guys doing? What are you doing in response? What can we get you, because they don't want to have to do anything. They just want to be able to stand there next to a leftist and say, oh, I'm this conservative hero because I don't believe in the Green New Deal like this guy over here does. And that, what it does is it kind of gets a lot of our friends, just not this room because you're in the RLC, but a lot of our friendly Republicans distracted. And to think, well, obviously the Republicans must be fighting for us. They must be doing something. And so they're just so focused on the left. But we need to really hold Republicans accountable. So once again, I don't want you to be pessimistic and say nothing. Their plan is to do nothing. But if you are really focused on putting pressure on Republicans, they will do something. The reason that we got the vaccine employee mandates through after I was beating my head against the wall and the Speaker of the House, everything else was going, they're doing everything they can to destroy me. They moved my office. They were attacking me. They just did a $13,000 mass text message in my district saying I wasn't even at the special session, even though I was all 3 days and I voted on everything and I gave speeches against Joe Biden on the floor and the Democrats like literally had my mic cut. It was a whole thing. They did a mass text to try to attack me because they don't want any elected Republican that's going to be critical of Republicans and telling guys like you. I've spoken about this, it's a true story. I've spoken 60 of these events in 2021. 60 times I've spoken at various clubs, Federated Republican clubs, RECs, this club, Veterans Club, all these different Republican grassroots clubs from literally Key West to Quincy, like literally past Tallahassee. I've spoken in this whole state, right? And the Republicans go completely bonkers because when you come in, you tell the voters what's really going on. Here's what they're not doing. Here's what they can do. It'll take 2 seconds, but they don't want to do it. And this is why they either get paid off, or they're cowards, or they're afraid of their own leadership, etc. Dude, it leaves them naked and exposed. Exposed. And so if you can create the pressure on all the elected officials in the state, they'll do something. Now, of course, our governor, who's a very good governor, he's very responsive to what the base wants. So if people will really get loud about a topic, he'll act, he'll do the right thing. So the truth is, a lot of times getting the legislature to do the right thing means pressuring DeSantis to push the legislature. Because like the vaccine employee mandate, they've worked against us the whole time, but when DeSantis got behind it, he's the second most popular Republican in the United States, behind Trump. So of course they're going to go along with it. They're not going to commit political suicide to go against the governor. So you put pressure on him and some others, and then you can get things through, even through the rhinos, because they're weak people. They'll just get pushed right through.
How do you get rid of the rhinos when the rhinos are the gatekeepers for the primary process?
They're not the gatekeepers for the primary process. What are you talking about?
Well, I mean,
You're the gatekeeper.
the people at the local level, Republican executive committees, etc., are the ones who decide who is going to be supported.
No, that's not true. Primary elections are, anybody can talk, if you don't know, anybody can file for office. You go into, and thankfully Florida still has the system, a closed Republican primary where only Republicans can vote. The establishment will coalesce around the most malleable, most unprincipled, most milquetoast candidates because they know they can kind of bend them and extract them and get them to do certain things. And they will start working against the principal candidates. They're like, that dude's going to be really, he's not going to be able to move. Like there's one guy said about me in Tallahassee there, he said, Sabatini, we can never get you to move off your stuff. That's the way he phrased it. We'll never get you to move off your stuff. So we'll never lobby on it. And that's, they don't want, they want people that are malleable and moldable and everything else. I mean, we're in Charlotte County. Your guys here, your people here, or your state legislators here, they have no principles. They're malleable. It's just whatever the leadership tells them to do, that's what they're doing. One day they're against this, and then they're like, okay, you're going to do this now. Okay, we're going this way. They're along for the ride. They're there for a little shiny little cup fan that says representative whoever, and that's why they're there, maybe help their law firm or their business. But they're not there because they actually think that this country is out of time. That's not why they're in office. So you get involved in these primaries and you can win. The problem is a lot of people are lazy. They're just like, I'm just going to vote in November. The primary is everything. And I will tell you, a lot of the bills I file, a lot of them, it's really hard to pass. I can honestly tell you, a lot of them are going to die. Why? Because it takes a long time. It took 13 years for constitutional carry to pass in Texas. But why do I file them? I file them for 2 reasons. One is to put everybody on the record. They have the opportunity to either co-sponsor the bill or support the bill verbally or whatever, or not. And the Republicans in office right now who aren't saying, oh, I'm for this audit, or I'm for this, or I'm for that, and the bills are out there, now you have ammunition. You have ammunition to use against them. They did nothing on all these bills that were out there. They did nothing. They wouldn't even post or talk about them. And that's everything. And by the way, the best litmus test of who the real principal guys are is the pulpit, the rhetoric they use. Because most of the elected officials in the Republican Party, you'll see, like if you go to official channels, whether it's social media or their emails or whatever, they never talk about any of the contentious stuff unless it's like the safest issue. You know, they waited like till the lockdowns were done for like a month, and they're like, we're against the lockdown. You know, like, these lockdowns are unconstitutional, blah, 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 blah. Like the first 60 days, they're just like twiddling their thumb. This is what they do, right? The vaccine employee mandates, not one Republican elected official other than me, DeSantis, spoke about the employee vaccine mandates. The day that he called a special session and the bill came out and everybody said, you know, the leadership said they're on board, every single one of them was posting and doing rallies like this. We're against these employee vaccine mandates. We're going to fight like hell, blah, 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 blah. So look at what their pulpit is, and that's how you know who the rhinos are. Because people always go, who are the real rhinos? Just look at, what are they saying? What are they saying on their social media channel? Most of them say nothing. That usually is a pretty damn good indicator.
Question. I hold you to the first choice. Who are your two top choices to be speaker in 2022?
Well, I think Trump would be a great speaker. He doesn't want to be the speaker.
Who?
Trump.
No, the speaker of the House.
Anybody want to be speaker of the House?
Yeah, no, but I don't know if you know, there's a huge effort to get Trump to be the speaker. So I won't be voting for Kevin McCarthy under any circumstances. So what?
You wouldn't vote for him?
No, under zero circumstances. So under no circumstances. So it's either, for me, it would either be somebody out of the Freedom Caucus, like a Scott Perry or Andy Biggs or Chip Roy, one of those guys, like a good like freedom guy, or Paul Gosar or Marjorie Taylor Greene, somebody like that, somebody that's willing to rock the boat and fight and has a principled vision.
What about Jim Jordan?
I like Jim Jordan, but I will tell you, Jim Jordan isn't exactly who you probably think he is. He's one of the guys that fought the hardest to stop big tech, doing anything on the big tech issue for years. Took a lot of money from Google. You know, you gotta. I hate saying this because everyone's going, "What do you mean Jim Jordan's like so great?" A lot of these guys, you gotta really dig into what they're doing behind the scenes because they're really tied into some of these special interests. And Jordan was really, really tight with Google, and he's one of the guys whipping votes for McCarthy because he was promised to be the judiciary chair if McCarthy wins. So McCarthy will be a disaster, and I don't care who the committee chair is. Jim Jordan can be here. It's all puppetry. The only person with real power is the speaker. Everything else is fake. I'm the committee chair of this. It's all fake. It's all puppetry. The speaker has all the power. Period. 100%. So anybody who's working for McCarthy, that's not good. And I'm not saying bad he's on Jordan. I like Jordan. I do like Jordan. He's one of the better members. But do I think he's like one of the top? He's actually not.
He's in the Ryan that molded the.
He's not even up Paul Ryan. I'm not saying that. But he's not exactly where he needs to be. And a lot of people don't know that.
Concerning what's going on with the censorship and social media and stuff, you feel Section 30, how would you approach that, especially considering how many of us conservative voices are being silenced?
Yep.
On these platforms, granted,
Well,
they are private entities, but still at the same token, mostly our First Amendment should be dictated by some corporation.
At this point, I think the window of reform is almost gone. I think you just at this point have to break up all the big tech companies. You have to. They're so cannibalistic and they're so destructive. They're so evil and destructive. The new guy who just took over Twitter he's even worse than Jack Dorsey. So at this point, you have to use reformed antitrust laws to just break these companies up into smaller pieces. And I think you really have to do that. And additionally, you have to reform Section 230 and classify them as common carriers, which is a fancy legal way of saying that they would basically be treated like telecommunications companies where they're not allowed to discriminate, they're not allowed to employ any kind of viewpoint discrimination, they can't punish you. I just got suspended for calling Kyle Rittenhouse a hero on Facebook. They permanently suspended me. They made it that I can't advertise on the platform. So yeah, you got to reform Section 230, classify them as common carriers, but you also got to break these guys up because at this point they're hell bent on making sure that a guy like Donald Trump will never hold the White House again.
He said that.
Yeah, they said it. Yeah.
Question on the immigration, all the people that were sent here. When we heard about the 70 planes, and I'm sure they're still coming. Where are these people going? I heard Cape Canaveral.
Yeah, they're living all around the state of Florida. They use housing. They get a lot of money from charities, organizations like the Catholic Charity, woke, liberal organizations, things affiliated with like George Soros and other liberal organizations that have billion-dollar donors putting money to make them subsist, and then they're working illegally and living in various, sometimes affordable housing complexes. So we're subsidizing their housing, which I think is insane. But they're just living here, working here, and they're not going anywhere until we start really focusing on deporting them. The truth is, once you make an effort to deport, there'll be a lot of them who just leave, because once the deportation starts, a lot of them just say, okay, well, this is happening. And the truth is, if you pass E-Verify, a lot of them are gonna, I hate to use the term, but like self-deport. We still need to do our own deportation, but like if you pass E-Verify, which it's shocking to me that we haven't done it yet, it's still the #1 issue in the state and at the federal level. Once you do that, a lot of them are just gonna leave. So, but we have to do that, and the key is to make sure you grant no amnesty in the meantime to not any single one. No DACA, no nothing, not a single person can get amnesty. But yeah, it's the #1 issue. An immigration moratorium, stop illegal immigration, militarize the border, and do mass deportation. It's very important.
You said before you thought Trump might run for president.
Yeah.
I heard a lawyer online say that as soon as he declares his candidacy, they're going to try to indict him in several states, New York and a couple others. But regardless of that, is there any chance you have a Republican ticket of Trump and DeSantis?
No.
No DeSantis?
Well, no, I mean, I don't.
Well, no, because you said
I'm not an advisor to the president, but I don't think that he would look at DeSantis, because DeSantis is, key executive in the state, he's running it. I think he's looking at smaller figures, different figures, disparate figures who aren't have as much, maybe as much.
You can hear it.
Yeah, so DeSantis is running for election next year. He's going to win, and he's going to do 4 more years, and then he'll probably run after Trump. So, and then I don't know anything about, if the states get back Trump, I can't control what New York does, but it'll be just a fake political charge and it'll go away probably. But next question.
So how do these rhinos in Tallahassee reconcile the fact that you've been endorsed by Mark Miller, General Flynn, Rand Paul, and those of us who know President Trump supports you?
Yeah.
And many others, I'm sure. I mean, how do they reconcile that now that President Trump hasn't publicly came out?
By seething, by tossing and turning in their sleep and seething and gnashing their teeth with anger. No, it really makes it mad. Like, they hate the fact, because when I got in the race, they were like, Sabatini's hated by the Tallahassee establishment, he's not giving a fundraise, he's toxic. And of course, like I'm not trying to brag, but I gathered all this steam, all this force, got all these major endorsements. I'm endorsed by Senator Rand Paul, and I think it's 4 or 5 of the best U.S. congressmen in the country: Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, Paul Gosar, Madison Cawthorn, several others. Ted Yoho, former congressman from Florida, who was probably the most conservative elected official in the history of Florida, helped start the Freedom Caucus and beat Boehner and get Boehner thrown out. I'm endorsed by General Michael Flynn, who I think is probably the greatest American first hero in the country, along with Trump. And also proud to be endorsed by Roger Stone and a lot of other people in the American First Movement. So, yeah, they're really mad, and we raised a lot of money, we got a lot of support, we hit tens of thousands of doors already. But, I'm more, here's the thing. They're mad at me because I'm beating the system, but what I'm also setting up, which is what they really hate, is the blueprint of how to beat the system and win, right? So I beat all the well-known establishment consultant-driven candidates in my primary for State House, ran on an entire platform of drain the swamp in Tallahassee, anti-establishment, America First, populism, protect the middle class, screw the establishment, and it worked, and I've been that way all 4 years, haven't apologized for it, and they have all these symbolic things they do to try to attack me. So like they moved my office to the lower lobby, which is where DeSantis' cabinet meets. So they're like, haha, we moved it. I'm like, I'm on the same floor as the governor now, so I'm happy with that. But the truth is, like, they'll move your, this and that. They'll move your committee assignments around. They'll take a bill that they were never going to let pass anyways, and they'll kill it earlier and be like, look what we did. So it's all this symbolic stuff. And what's funny is, none of it works. In fact, it gets you more support because now people say, okay, cool, now I see the divide. Like here's the Rhino establishment who's exposed themselves through their actions, and here's the guy who's actually trying to shake things up and expose and create transparency in the process. Wow. Had they never done any of that, it would have actually hurt me because it would have given me less of an avenue or a spotlight. And so they just kind of screwed themselves. But like I said, what they really fear is the blueprint I'm setting up. Because what I'm doing now, and one of the real reasons I'm running for Congress, is the pulpit is so much bigger that I can start going through the state and start recruiting people. Hey, you're going to run in Charlotte County. Michael, you're running in Lee County. You're going to run in Bay. I'm going to come to, as a congressman, we're doing a mega fundraiser for you. We're doing a rally for you. We're, just like kind of General Flynn is leading the way on right now, holding people up and positioning people to help rebuild the movement. I can be a part of that too, in my own way. So that's what they really hate, is that now it's being replicated. So like right now, the establishment is trying to pick people in certain state houses, state senate districts that they like, and so I'm like strategically recruiting people in these races and saying, here's the real guy. Like here's the guy that's bought and paid for, that's going to be putting the strawberry shortcake up bill every single year, and just focused on like appeasing trial lawyers or whatever weird, stupid, like special interest motivates that person. Here's the guy that's actually focused on creating conservative models of education in our state, stopping illegal immigration, cutting down government, holding government agencies accountable, doing real stuff. And so this is what they really hate. This is what they really hate. And it's a win-win. I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm going to win my congressional election. But even if I lost, I still win because what we've done is we've built the movement and we're just going to keep running and bringing more people in. Nothing bothers me more than when somebody runs, loses, and then they're done and they just leave. They just exit stage left and they leave the scene. You only lose when you quit. And it's not about one election. It's about the movement and staying involved as long as you can and putting your energy in. Because a lot of people are like, I lost, I'm out. And it's like, okay, you obviously, I didn't want you. Because once they leave, I realize that person should have never won to begin. Because if they quit, I'm going to get another coffee if you don't mind.
As a person who's actually in elected office,
Just black coffee, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
I'm actually going to be attending my first lobby days this coming January.
Good for you.
And I'm curious, as an elected representative, when somebody comes to see you, what is the correct way you should see a person and lobby them to get their point across?
Well, you don't have to lobby me because I'm pretty much to the right of you or anybody that comes to my office, or as right as they want anything. So I would say you're just wasting your time because I agree with you. You can educate me on things that I don't know about, like this gentleman's going to do. But generally, you don't need to sway me because I'm there already. But what I would take for the average member, which I think is a more relevant question, like how do you sway the average person? The truth is you have to make them know and think that this is an issue not just for you, but a lot of people. Like if you do not co-sponsor this E-Verify bill, thank you, by the way. If you don't co-sponsor this E-Verify bill, you're not taking a stand and issuing a statement on the Harvey bill right now. We're supporting somebody else in the primary. Nothing makes the establishment more deathly afraid than primary elections. The reason why Texas Governor Abbott is now doing all this amazing stuff. He did the Harvey bill, the constitutional carry. He did the common carrier social media censorship bill. He banned illegal immigrants from using public transportation. He's independently building the wall in the state. He's doing all this crazy stuff. You're like, oh my God, this guy's on fire. Why? You know why he's doing all that? Because he's getting not just one, but two extremely strong, credible primary opponents against him. One is one of my heroes, Colonel Allen West, and the other one is the guy I'm supporting in the race, who I absolutely love, is State Senator John Huffines. He was like the most conservative guy in the legislature and held the establishment accountable, and he was in a swing seat. And I love guys like that who are really principled even when they're in a purple seat. So he's awesome too. So you got these two, and he's a very wealthy guy, he's self-financing. So you got these two amazing primary opponents. So Abbott's losing his mind. Yeah. And so he went from being one of the biggest rhinos, like soft, kind of go on to get along, defense-minded, not offense-minded Republican. He did a complete transformation. He's pushing through all this stuff because he's like, oh shit, I'm getting primary. Give me every conservative bill you can in the legislature right now. He even beat DeSantis to the punch on the vaccine employee mandates. He did an executive order to ban it. Wasn't upheld. Now they got to get through the legislature. But he was fighting it really early on because of these primaries. So primaries are everything. So how do I answer your question? I would say, you let them know there's a lot of people behind you on the issue, whatever the issue is, and if they don't do what you want them to do, and it can't be, oh, if the bill comes up, I'm going to vote for it. No, what is your stand today? What are you doing right now to support the bill? Where is your statement? Where is your rally? Where is you exposing people? Where's your co-sponsorship? What are you doing right now? And the limited power you do have as an elected official, state legislator, what are you doing right now to further the issue? Because if the answer is nothing, we're going to find somebody to run against you who will do something.
And the e-verify, I understand it's really a great concept. The problem is having the teeth behind it for these corporations that are, they'll get the e-verify in there, but then if you don't go against them, if they don't follow through and make sure that everybody is in the system.
Yeah. So when I say mandatory verify, the implicit part is that you also have a state agency that's going through everyone's books and checking and making sure that if there are hiring illegal, that there's going to be criminal civil penalties. Because the truth of the matter is, if you pass e-verify, like the e-verify bill that passed forward was a completely fake bill. It said cities and counties have to use it, and there's also no enforcement mechanism.
Yeah.
I thought they were going to do a 50% bill where they made it mandatory for everybody and then just didn't ever check the books, which still would have been a step forward, right? Because now you got it on the books, now we got to do the enforcement. They didn't even do that. They just passed and say cities and counties have to use it, which is less than 1% of Florida's workforce. Less than 1% of Floridians work at a city or a county. 99% work in the private sector. They didn't even do the right thing. So anyways, long story short, you got to pass it, and then you got to make it to the Attorney General's office or local sheriffs or whatever incentivized to actually go out and enforce it.
How do we get behind the Attorney General that's going to do the right thing and not be like somebody who's going to sue you?
Most of your Republican Attorney Generals are complete deadbeats. There's a couple really good ones. Oklahoma, West Virginia has got one of the best now. Actually, he's the state treasurer. He's using state power to do these kind of things. He's divesting state pension funds from companies that are woke. They just pulled a bunch of money out of these companies that were pushing against gas and oil. We need to be divesting from all woke companies. Nike shoes should be totally divested. Where are the Republicans on this issue? I don't know. They just don't do it. How do you do it? You got to recruit them. I personally, it's nothing personal against Ashley Moody. She's kind of a deadbeat AG. I mean, she'll sign her name on a couple things, but she never enforced the laws against the school boards that were doing the mass mandates. She never did any of the big stuff on election integrity. She joined one other guy's suit like when it was too late. She's not a leader. She's not on offense. So I would support somebody that primary her, but that's just me.
You already talked about how big tech is banning free speech. What is your opinion of Florida cities banning free speech? I don't know if you heard Punta Gorda, because of the F5 flag, just banned free speech. You can be fined up to $5,000 and be arrested. Ask me how I know. They tried to find me $11,000, brought it down to $2,500, put a lien on my house for free speech. Is there anything that you can pass to stop?
So constitutionally, they can't discriminate you based on the content of the sign. They can only get you for breaking the sign code. I believe that sign codes are way too restrictive. When I was a city commissioner, we rewrote our sign code to give way more discretion, let people kind of do whatever they want with their signs to an extent, like you couldn't have like a balloon going out into the street sign kind of thing in a residential neighborhood, but like generally we let people do whatever they want. Punta Gorda is a super liberal city with some weird, creepy liberal people on the city council, I assume. I know that because like it's such a small town, they're one of the first cities. So who's your state rep here? Is it Michael Graham?
Yeah.
This is the problem. This is the problem, right? Because it's like, hey, what are you guys doing? What are you doing? What are you doing to make it that your state senator and state rep is taking a stand on that issue? Because the truth is, your local guy could file a bill that strips the city, through a local bill, strips them of all that power in 2 seconds, or you could have one of your guys pass a bill through that would restrict all the sign codes at the local level. The truth is,
answer an email, maybe that would happen.
well, I think you need to recruit a primary opponent in that race.
Oh,
Which
there it is.
Who's in the primary?
We only have the building till 9.
Okay. I'm going to wrap it up, but it's actually, I'll answer all your questions outside. I'm in in no rush at all. But I will tell you this, these primary elections are really important, and if you have a guy that's not working for you on one of these issues, you need to go recruit a primary opponent. Because what happens is, remember what I said about Abbott? Once there's a primary opponent, they start going nuts. Like, oh my God, I gotta go further to the right. So you can get them to dance just by recruiting a primary opponent. You gotta do it. Follow me on social media, Getter, Facebook, Twitter, whatever you use. At SabatiniForCongress.com is the website, but Sabatini should come right up for all the other platforms. And check me out. I hope you support me for Congress. And grab one of my pamphlets in the back.
Thank you.